Welcome back, and in this lesson I want to cover a theoretical topic which is really important to me personally and something that I think is really valuable to understand. And that is, what is multi and hybrid cloud and how do they relate to private and public cloud platforms? Now, why this matters is because AWS, Azure, and the Google Cloud Platform, they're all offering private cloud environments which can be used in conjunction with their public clouds. So to be able to pick when and where to use them effectively, you need to understand when something is multi-cloud and when it's hybrid cloud, because these are very different things. So let's jump in and get started. In the previous lesson, I covered the formal definition of cloud computing. Now, I know this was a very dry theoretical lesson, but hopefully you've come out of that understanding what a cloud environment is. Now, public cloud, simply put, is a cloud environment that's available to the public. And many vendors are currently offering public cloud platforms, including AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud. These are all examples of public cloud platforms. And they're public cloud because they meet the 5 essential characteristics of cloud computing and that they're available to the general public. So to be public cloud, it needs to first classify as a cloud environment, and then it needs to be available to the general public. Now you can, if you have very specific needs, or if you want to implement something which is highly available, you can choose to use multiple public cloud platforms in a single system. Now that's known as multi-cloud. So multi-cloud is using multiple cloud environments, and the way that you implement this can impact how successful it is. Now, keeping things simple, you could choose to implement a simple mirrored system. One part of your system could be hosted inside AWS and the other in Azure. This means that you've got cloud provider level resilience. If one of these vendors fails, you'll know that at least part of your system will remain fully functional and running in the other. Now, with regards to multi-cloud, I would personally stay away from any products or vendors who attempt to provide a so-called single management window or single pane of glass, if you want to use the jargon, when using multiple cloud platforms. It is possible to manage multiple cloud platforms as one single environment, but while it is possible, it abstracts away from these individual environments, relying on the lowest common feature set. And so you do lose a lot of what makes each vendor special and unique. So in this example, I could pick AWS and Azure. I could abstract away from that using a third-party tool, and when I wanted to provision a virtual machine, that tool would select which cloud vendor to use. The problem with that is that it would have to assume a feature set which is available in both of them. So if AWS had any features that weren't available in Azure or vice versa, this third-party tool could not utilize them while staying abstracted away. So that's a really important thing to understand. Generally, when I'm thinking about multi-cloud environments, I'm looking at it from a highly available perspective. So putting part of my infrastructure in one and part in another. It's much simpler and generally much more effective. Now, each of these 3 cloud vendors also offers a solution which can be dedicated to your business and run from your business premises. This is a so-called private cloud. Now, for AWS, this is called AWS Outposts. For Azure, it's the Azure Stack, and for Google, it's Anthos. Now, I want to make a very special point of highlighting that there is a massive difference between having on-premises infrastructure, such as VMware, Hyper-V, or XenServer, versus having a private cloud. A private cloud still needs to meet the 5 essential characteristics of cloud computing, which most traditional infrastructure platforms don't. So private cloud is cloud computing which meets these 5 characteristics, but which is dedicated to you as a business. So a VMware, Hyper-V or XenServer implementation, they're not necessarily private cloud. A lot of these platforms do have private cloud-like features, But in general, the only environments that I consider true private cloud are Outposts, the Azure Stack, and Google Anthos. Now, it is possible to use private cloud in conjunction with public cloud, and this is called hybrid cloud. It's hybrid cloud only if you use a private cloud and a public cloud cooperating together as a single environment. It's not hybrid cloud if you just utilize a public environment such as AWS together with your on-premises equipment. Now, to add confusion, you might hear people use the term hybrid environment. And in my experience, people use hybrid environment to refer to the idea of public cloud used together with existing on-premises infrastructure. So I'm going to try throughout this course to have separate definitions. If I use the terms hybrid environment or hybrid networking, then that's different. That simply means connecting a public cloud environment through to your on-premises or data center based traditional infrastructure. So there's a difference between hybrid cloud, which is a formal definition, and then hybrid environment or hybrid networking. So try and separate those and understand what's meant by each. With true hybrid cloud, you get to use the same tooling, the same interfaces, the same processes to interact with both the public and private components. So let's summarize this. Public cloud means to use a single public cloud environment such as AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud. Private cloud is to use on-premises cloud. Now, this is important. This is one of the most important distinctions to make. For it to be private cloud, you need to be using an on-premises real cloud product. It needs to meet those 5 essential characteristics. Multi-cloud means using more than one public cloud. So an example of this might be AWS and Azure, or AWS, Azure, and Google. They're examples of a multi-cloud deployment. So using multiple public clouds in one deployment, that's a multi-cloud environment. And I mentioned that earlier in the lesson. That can be as simple as deploying half of your infrastructure to one public cloud and half to the other, or using a third-party tool that abstracts away from a management perspective. But I would not recommend any abstraction or any third-party tools. Generally, in my experience, the best multi-cloud environments are those which use part of your infrastructure in one cloud environment and part in the other. Hybrid cloud means utilizing public and private clouds, generally from the same vendor, together as one unified platform. And then lastly, and probably personally one of the most important points to me, hybrid cloud is not utilizing a public cloud like AWS and connecting it to your legacy on-premises environment. That is a hybrid environment or a hybrid network. Hybrid cloud is a very specific thing, and I'm stressing this because it is important now to be an effective solutions architect. And I've got a strong suspicion, and I'm winking now if you could see me in real life, I have a strong suspicion that this is going to feature on the exam in some form over the current months. So keep it in mind. You need to have a really good distinction between what public cloud, private cloud, multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, and hybrid environments are. Understand all of those separate definitions. Now that's all I wanted to cover in this lesson. I hope it wasn't too dry. I really do want to make sure that you understand all of these terms on a really foundational level, because I think they're really important to get a good mark on the exam and to be an effective solutions architect. So go ahead, complete this lesson, and then when you're ready, I'll see you in the next.